Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast, the podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. Today is a solo episode, and I have titled it, Quit If You're Not Happy Where You Work. And this particular episode, it's been on my mind for some time because over the years I've seen a lot of podiatrists complain about their employers, especially new graduates. They find the work sometimes uninspiring and the profession is not what they expected. And I find this frustrating because many leave within the first years of employment, but I know how rewarding podiatry can be. And I'm sure many of you who listen to this podcast on a regular basis, you already know this. And back in June 2022, I did two episodes. It was episode 209 and 210, and they were titled, Why I Left Podiatry. Both those episodes have probably been two of the most popular episodes. And what some of the ex-podiatrists told me was really, really concerning. I recommend go back and have a listen to those. But it was also not unexpected. Since then, I've been paying close attention, especially on social media, different comments that I see from new and recent graduates, and also there's a lot of anonymous posts about employment concerns. Occasionally, when something really stands out to me, I will send a direct message to the person that made that comment to get a little bit more information. And a common response is that they feel they were lied to by their employer at the interview, and what they were told about the job has not lived up to their expectations. In fact, it was far from it. They seem to be doing all the routine foot care and nothing else, and they were unsure basically what they should do next. So I would converse with them backwards and forwards and give them a little bit of advice. So this is why I titled this episode, Quit If You're Not Happy Where You Work. Now make sure you listen to the end because there's more to it than just that. Now I could have titled this episode, Don't Stay With an Employer Who Lies, or an employer who conveniently stretches the truth. But I thought Quit If You're Not Happy Where You Work was more appropriate. What I'd like to do is give you an analogy that I feel aligns with this particular topic. Now, you can close your eyes if you want. I wouldn't do that if you're driving. I want you to imagine you and your partner. You've been invited to another couple's house for dinner. In fact, it's not just any couple. It's a couple you're really close friends with. You've known them for a number of years. When you turn up, there's a beautiful table setting. White tablecloth, gorgeous table arrangement, might be candles burning, and there's a little bit of light background music just to set the mood of the room. And you can tell it is going to be a great night. Your hosts greet you with a big smile, a warm embrace, and they tell you that tonight you're going to be served veal scallopini with garlic lemon potatoes and a side of green beans. Sounds magnificent, and it conjures up images of similar meals you probably had at some of your favorite Italian restaurants. After a few glasses of really, really nice wine, one of your hosts goes to the kitchen and begins the final preparations of your meal. Your mouth begins to water in anticipation because you know what's about to come. And you can smell it. It smells absolutely divine. Then your host walks back into the dining room carrying two really large plates. And you immediately think to yourself, oh my God, check the size of these servings. I don't know if I can eat that much, but you know what? I am going to give it a crack. And then you may even say out loud, wow, that looks fantastic. And you know you cannot wait for your plate to arrive. The host carefully places the first plate in front of their partner. And then the second plate, they place it where they were sitting. Then they sit down, they raise their wine glass, they look at their partner, they look at you and they say, bon appetit. And they both begin to eat. And without a moment hesitation, they just continue on with the conversation. You look at your partner with a confused look on your face and you're probably mouthing to them, where's my food? Now, think about what's just happened. Would you say something, or would you sit there in silence and just go along with the conversation as though nothing had happened? I think you would interrupt the conversation and ask why were they eating and you're sitting there with no food in front of you. And I would say you'd be somewhat confused. Then, after asking your very simple question, how would you feel if they said, oh, sorry, we haven't forgotten about you. We just thought we'd eat first until we'd had enough, and then we'd just push our plates over to you to finish them off. Do you have a problem with this? I think your initial reaction would be you'd just laugh. You would crack up laughing and say, okay, no, seriously, when are our plates coming out? But if they weren't joking, if it wasn't a joke and they were deadly serious, how would you react? Personally, I would lose it. I would not handle it very well at all. And I'd be telling them there is no way I'm eating their leftovers. And I'd probably also be telling them where they can shove the leftovers when they're finished. In fact, I don't think anyone would be okay with this situation, especially if you are promised a beautiful meal. So what does this story have to do with encouraging podiatrists to quit their jobs? Well, it has a lot to do with it. It has everything. Nobody wants anybody else's leftovers, ever. If you've ever employed a podiatrist, especially a new graduate, and if in your contract it says they'll be seeing a mixed caseload of patients because your clinic covers all aspects of podiatry, that's exactly what they're expecting. They're expecting a mixed caseload. They're expecting veal scallopini. But if the new graduate will only get the chance to see an MSK patient or any other interesting patient after the business owner and the other senior podiatrists are full, then they're really only getting the leftovers. And that's if there are any leftovers. They may eat everything and leave the new graduate or new podiatrist nothing with an empty plate of false hopes. In reality, what they will get is all the work the employer and the senior podiatrist don't want to do. They'll be doing the nursing homes. They'll be doing the home visits. They'll be doing all the routine foot care. And not that there's anything wrong with this type of podiatry work, but if that's not what they signed up for, that's where the problem lies. If you think back to your friends, if they invited you for dinner and they told you that they would be eating first and that they would be passing the leftovers over to you, and you still turned up, you can't complain because you knew what you signed up for. If your friend said to you they were going to be having veal scallopini and you were going to be having baked beans and toast, you cannot complain. But if that's not what you were told, you would be annoyed and probably a little bit angry. In fact, I think your friendship would be a little bit strained. And a lot of employee and employer relationships become strained for the same reasons. And when that occurs, the employee is mentally already looking for their next employer. So stop and think, have you done this to any employees or are you currently doing it? And if you are, this is why you'll probably find that they leave after their initial contract because your job is no good. Now, you may be wondering, why am I encouraging podiatrists to quit sooner rather than later? It's because I know there are a lot of good employers out there who are looking for podiatrists. I'm tired of hearing that there's a shortage of podiatrists. I personally don't think that's the case. I think there's an overabundance of below average jobs, and a lot of podiatrists and new graduates don't know how to spot them or tell them apart from a good position. About a month ago, when I heard this, I got really, really annoyed. I heard about a part-time lecturer or a tutor at one of the universities in Australia, I'm not going to say which one, only stays in their position so they have access to the graduating students. They employ at least one or two every year to replace the ones that they burn out from the year before. And I'm thinking, wow, yeah, talk about insider training. But I don't think this is anything new. This has been happening for a long time. And as I mentioned before, we often see new graduates complain on social media about their working conditions and unfair bosses, mostly anonymous, and can you blame them? Especially if you're employed by someone that's a lecturer at one of the universities that a lot of people know. And I've heard some podiatrists say, hang on, you've got to pay your dues. You've got to do some of the not so pleasant work first before you can see the more complicated cases. Or they'll say, oh, in our day we had to, and they'll go through all the bad things that used to happen to them in the early days of podiatry. And I'm thinking, well, thank God those days are behind us, because that way of thinking is obsolete and outdated. It's like dinosaur thinking. If we want podiatrists to stay in the profession, we've got to mentor them correctly, and they've got to see a good mix of patients, not just the leftovers. They've got to use what they learned at university and apply it. Otherwise, their skills will slowly diminish along with their confidence. And once their confidence is gone, it's pretty much all downhill from there. I've spoken to some people recently who have employed someone who works somewhere where all they did was routine foot care, and they are so scared about now going into a clinic that remotely does any sort of percentage of MSK, biomechanical, gait analysis, because they feel all those skills have been lost. And that's terrible to hear. I think most new graduates would understand that they're inexperienced in a clinical situation and probably will be doing a larger percentage of routine foot care cases in the beginning to help improve, one, their clinical, and two, their communication skills. and may even have to do some home visits or nursing homes, but it shouldn't be all they're doing. And they should not also be driving ridiculous distances between small backroom, unprofessional, bulk build satellite clinics and medical centers. It is just ridiculous. So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's well and good, Tyson, for bringing this all up. Fantastic. Do you have a solution? Well, I'm glad you asked. I do. I have two, actually. First one, be transparent and honest with the position you're offering. If you say you cover all aspects of podiatry, give an honest breakdown in the job offer. Do you do 50-50 MSK routine foot care? Or is it 30-70? It might be 5-95 MSK to routine. If that's the case, then that's fine. Just be transparent. If it's 25% MSK, 50% routine, 10% nail surgery, might be 15% home visits and nursing homes. If that's what it is, don't hide the facts of what you're offering. If there is travel involved between satellite clinics, make them aware of this. Don't hide this important information until they start working with you. If you're upfront and transparent, you will attract the podiatrists looking exactly for what you have to offer. In 2023, I had lunch with two graduating podiatrists from QUT up here in Cairns. They were up here for a bit of a break. They were doing their placement. Neither of them had committed to an employer and were both sort of looking for different jobs. One wanted predominantly routine foot care and the other one preferred or much preferred MSK work. The reason they hadn't committed was because they were looking for an employer that was the right fit for them. And they were saying that most of the job offers all look the same. So a little transparency would have been extremely helpful for them. My second solution is don't ask an employee to see a patient or do any work that you would not be prepared to do yourself. The reason my podiatry business stopped visiting nursing homes and doing home visits was because I no longer wanted to do them. And I thought, if I don't want to do them, why should anybody else in my team have to do them? And yes, I initially lost a little bit of money by choosing not to do this type of work, but my team was happier and they stayed. Plus, I looked at it this way, if we kept doing them and a team member did leave unexpectedly, which does happen, then I would have to do it. And I thought, bugger that, I don't want to do it. It used to kill my back, it hurt my hands, I didn't really enjoy it. And I'm not saying that I was too good to do nursing homes and home visits. I did my fair share, but I just didn't enjoy doing it. So if you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. It's the same as I don't like mushrooms, so I don't eat them unless someone hides them on a pizza. But for some podiatrists, they love it. But if you don't like it, stop making other podiatrists in your team do it unless you're upfront and honest about it in the contract. Now, I want to be clear about my intentions for this episode. I really do want employees to quit their jobs if they feel they've been lied to and all they're doing each and every day is eating the employer's leftovers. But first, let me just stress this. This is really important. Before you quit, make your employer aware that you are not happy and you prefer to resolve the problem, then quit. See, quitting is easy. Resolving the problem will take more work, but it could be good for both the employer and the employee. And I know from experience, when you're doing more of the type of work or podiatry work you enjoy, you will be a happier podiatrist and you will enjoy going to work each day. You'll enjoy going to work far more each day. And this philosophy applies to everybody in your team. If you want new graduates to stay longer, if you want any podiatrist to stay longer, make them happy and make them feel like they're part of the team, not a second-class member of your team, not the person that you flick all the stuff that you don't want. Now, I would love your feedback and comments on this episode, whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts. And remember, this is just my opinion, and we're all entitled to have one. Your opinion might be completely opposite to mine. So I hope you got something from this particular episode. I hope it's got you thinking about people in your team. If you're considering employing somebody, I hope it's got you just thinking at it at a different level. And I really believe the more honest and open you can be with your employment contract, or even with the job position when you're advertising it, I think you're going to get a much better fit with the podiatrist that's looking for that type of work. If you have any concerns with this, please send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com or tyson@podiatrylegends.com. Now, before I finish up, if you're enjoying the Podiatry Legends podcast, please tell your podiatry friends. Unless you don't have any, then you just keep it to yourself. That's fine. And If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and consider leaving a review on whatever podcast platform you happen to be using. And if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, just search for Tyson E Franklin. It's that easy to find. Okay, that's it for me. I want you to look after yourself, look after your family, and I'll be back next week with another guest episode. Okay, take care.